morning, Twin Cities. Welcome to your Sunday and welcome to Reckoning with Real Estate, a show about the American dream and building a better real estate company. I'm Paige Kale with the Real Estate Collaborative, and I'm joined in studio today by Bill Gray, who's with the Homeownership Center.
Hey, Paige.
Hey, Bill. Welcome. So glad you're here.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, your organization, I'm a big fan, and you guys do just a lot of good work. So we want to highlight that. Bill is a nonprofit public relations veteran with extensive experience across a variety of sectors. As Stakeholder Relations Director at the Minnesota Homeownership Center, Bill is responsible for all things communications and public relations, as well as relationship building and serving as lead staff for the Homeownership Opportunity Alliance, an entity co-convened by the Center and Minnesota Housing Finance Agency. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, well, we can talk about it a little bit, but the Homeownership Opportunity Alliance is just an effort to have a group of folks all pulling in the same direction: realtors, lenders, government, nonprofits, to try to make homeownership more accessible to everyone, but to make it a sustainable deal too, right? Not just getting people into it to get it into it.
So, right, which is so important.
Yeah, and I can tell you a couple things about the Homeownership Center itself. We are a nonprofit. We are a HUD intermediary. Okay. And so we handle certifying and training all of the homeownership advisors and educators in Minnesota, a lot of them anyways. And we have folks embedded in 30 different organizations around the state. So if you are in Duluth or Mankato and you're interested in looking into if you can figure out how to buy a house or not, you're talking to somebody from your community who actually knows about the market and knows about the local environment. So it's a pretty cool model, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And we will talk about the Homeownership Opportunity Alliance. We'll talk about Minnesota Homeownership Center and all the good work that you're doing. Let's start with a question that we like to ask our guests. First off, the American dream. What do you think about, feel about it, images that come up? What do you want to say about the American dream, and your thoughts?
I guess for me, and probably because of the industry I'm in, it does involve home ownership, right? So the idea of being able to purchase and own your own home is important for all sorts of reasons, but it is also the number one way that folks build generational wealth in this country. And so the American dream to me is the idea that you can kind of play this game too, and be able to get yourself to a point where you can sustainably purchase a home, keep that home, watch the value of that home appreciate over time, and each month you're paying yourself in effect, right? You're paying down your mortgage. That's not only kind of a forced savings account, but you're paying. You buy your house in 1990 and you pay it off in let's say 2020, 30-year mortgage. You paid off that 1990 price, right? But you now have this house that's at a 2020 price. So I'm just trying to make the point that this appreciation is such a big part of the home ownership equation and the American dream. And we just want to try to make that as accessible as it can be to anyone who wants to try to see if they can pull that off.
Yes. And that very much aligns with REC's goals as well. And it's a good segue into the Homeownership Center and what y'all do. I will read your mission statement.
Sure.
The Minnesota Homeownership Center promotes and advances successful home ownership in Minnesota with an emphasis on serving those facing the greatest barriers to home ownership, namely lower income households and communities of color. So why don't we talk about why is communities of color called out in your mission?
It's a great question, and it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about, right? Home ownership, the number one way to build generational wealth in the U.S. Communities of color were specifically barred from ownership via racial covenants and redlining for a lot of the beginning of the 20th century. The patterns created by that are still with us. So most prominently, and I can try to demonstrate this here, in Minnesota, the black-white racial homeownership gap, so the percentage of folks that own their own home is somewhere, I think it's close to like 75% for white households, 30% for black households. I do think we're making a little bit of progress there. It was lower a couple years ago, but that's the pattern that we're left with, and that pattern is also the wealth gap. They go hand in hand. I would say to you, Paige, if listeners want to learn more about this, TPT did a great documentary on this a few years back. It's called Jim Crow of the North. It's on their website. And I also want to make sure that people know, I mean, this happened everywhere, right? This isn't just a Minnesota thing. This happened everywhere, and it just is what it is. We're left with the patterns, and our mission is to help the folks who face the greatest barriers. So that's lower income households and communities of color. So.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned Jim Crow of the North. I think for anybody that's listening or watching who wants to get a really great primer on why our neighborhoods are segregated the way they are, it's a great documentary to watch. And I know that Minnesota is often touted as having the highest home ownership rate
too, right,
in the country, and the biggest disparity between white households and then people of color, and that home ownership rate, which you just
and you can imagine that makes perfect sense, right? So that's the pattern we're left with.
Yeah, and we will put in our program notes kind of definitions of redlining and steering and racially restrictive covenants, because all of those did play into what we're left with today, and why it's, I think, not to get too esoteric here, but Mapping Prejudice, who was also involved in the TPT production, they have these maps that show kind of the racially restrictive covenants and where they are, and then the overlay of where the high opportunity neighborhoods are today and the low opportunity neighborhoods are, and it really kind of maps out. I think it's just a great example of why it's so important to understand the history of these patterns and the history of systemic racism. And then now that we understand it, how can we work to make a difference?
How did we get here?
Right.
And are we going to do anything about it?
Right. Which is another great segue into the work that the Homeownership Center does.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. Are we going to do anything about it? This is a very simple case where all you're doing is making it possible for someone to pull it off, right? And showing them how. The services we offer, homeownership advising, for example, and we'll talk about it more in a minute. This is available to anyone in Minnesota, regardless of any factors, right? It's free homeownership advisor advice from somebody who's going to sit down with you. They're certified and trained by HUD. They will pull your credit, a soft pull. They will figure out how mortgage ready you are or are not. And they will kind of help you build a roadmap forward. And you can decide if you want to take that roadmap and go travel it or not.
So, clarifying question, the Homeownership Center is not a lender,
not
a direct
at all.
lender, but it sounds like you're a really good first stop.
If
somebody's considering homeownership.
Right. So the advisors that we're not lenders, but we do work with lenders who are familiar with, the first home mortgages and these kind of things. These are special products that are a better deal than you can get if you're not a first-time home buyer.
Right.
They also know about the any down payment assistance programs that may be out there. That can be something that you have to pay back at the end of the loan. It can also be something that a portion of it might be forgiven over a certain amount of time. But my point in saying this is these guys know how that side of the system works, and they can guide you through it in a smooth manner. And sometimes if you pick a realtor out of a phone book, they might not have a phone book. Listen to me. Still have phone books. They might not.
And I was tracking. I was like,
yeah, right.
Yep, the phone book.
They might not. Work in this area all the time, and they might not be aware of all of the opportunities in these products that someone might be able to access.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I've worked with your organization on and off for several years and attended the Homeownership Opportunity Alliance meetings. And one thing that you all talk about is, people that have been shut out, individuals, families who have been shut out of the homeownership market and maybe didn't grow up experiencing homeownership, often believe that it's not possible for them.
That's a great point. So someone might go and to a bank and apply for a mortgage, and they might get turned down because I don't know, their credit, let's say it's 650 or 620. I don't know these numbers well enough to have that conversation.
Sure,
but they get denied, right?
Right. Okay, I'm going to have you hold that thought.
Okay.
Hold that thought, because we're going to go into break in about 30 seconds. But why don't you tell listeners where they can find you on the interweb?
So our website, HOCMN.org. That's for Homeownership Center, Minnesota. HOCMN.org, and you can find an advisor on there by zip code, all sorts of things, and see what services are available.
Yeah, and you all recently redid your, well, maybe it was a year or two ago, redid your website.
Time flies.
It does, but it's a great place to start, and it's a really easy website to navigate. So we're going to head into break, and you are listening to Reckoning with Real Estate, a show about the American dream and building a better real estate company. We will catch you on the other side.
Through the night, oh, what a sight! Wrecking balls in flight, bringing down the light. Every sweet.
Welcome back to the second half of Reckoning with Real Estate. I'm Paige Kao with the Real Estate Collaborative, and you can find us at www.therecolab.com. That's THE. RE is in real estate, and collab is short for collaborative, therecolab.com. We are with Bill Gray with the Homeownership Center, and before break, we were talking about folks who apply for a mortgage and are turned down, and then they think that's the end of the story. So Bill, why don't you pick up?
I mean, it sounds like the end of the story, right? You don't qualify, so I guess I can't do it. That's, I think, where we can offer the most help. So I have a friend in the industry that talks about how it should never be I got to do this right. It should never be a fast no, but rather a slow yes. Right.
I like that. Yes.
And if you don't, what we would like to see is if you are turned down for a mortgage, the bank should say, hey, there's resources out there that can help you get your finances in order so that you can qualify for a mortgage. But that doesn't always happen. When you come and work with one of our folks, like I say, we build a roadmap forward for you that you can decide whether or not you want to pursue. If you do pursue it, we will be with you every step of the way with this help and advice and whatnot. So let's say, and again, I don't know credit scores well enough to throw real numbers out here, but let's say you apply for the mortgage, you get denied. What's your next step? Your next step, and what should have been your first step, really, because anyways, I'm not sure how credit works completely, but I think if you get denied, then your score goes down a little bit more for a little while because it's a denial. But anyways, you sit down with one of our folks, and they will pull your credit, soft pull, so it doesn't affect that credit score, and see where you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you might be pretty much ready, because here's the thing, Paige, and you know this. If you're paying full freight rent in this market,
right,
you can probably swing. I mean, this was more true when interest rates were lower, but it's still true to some extent. You can probably swing a mortgage payment.
mm-hmm.
It's getting over that hurdle of qualifying and that down payment and that kind of stuff that is, the barrier. And so we can work with you. We can look at your credit. We can say, this is the biggest problem on there. If we address this issue on your credit in this way,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, don't try to do this yourself, because credit scores are very counterintuitive in this country, how they work.
Right.
But we can show you what to do, and then that score comes up, and then you can, continue following that map of achieving home ownership for yourself. And I want to be very clear again here. This is all about sustainable home ownership,
right?
Something that you can get into that is not going to be a financial burden moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of real talk in these conversations. A lot of, you need to understand what home ownership means. If that refrigerator goes out, you don't call State Farm. You have to figure that out yourself.
Right.
And so homebuyer education is another thing we do. It's an 8-hour class. HUD certified trainers train this course. I will tell you, for an 8-hour class, the percent of people who would recommend it to someone else looking to buy a home is upwards of 95%.
I believe it. We work with first-time home buyers who don't necessarily need that class to get their loan, and we always recommend that people take it.
It's so cool. I wish I would have taken it. I bought my house many moons ago, and I think I signed my papers in a Dairy Queen. I didn't really know what I was doing. I had PMI and support primary mortgage insurance on it. I guess I figured that out after a little while, got it to where I didn't have to pay that anymore, and then I don't know what else I did.
Yeah. A couple points I want to highlight. So, talking about the American dream, and you mentioned it at the beginning of the show, home ownership is like a central kind of facet when people think about the American dream. And you say this in your notes, home ownership isn't for everyone.
Right.
Some people,
and that's fine.
Absolutely. And some people, for a variety of reasons, renting makes a lot more sense for them. But for those people that want to achieve home ownership, your 8-hour class, I think, really, I'm just going to maybe takes a little bit of the shine off the dream in a really good, practical
real talk
way.
Again. Yeah.
Right. And we also have, I was going to show this to you before we started talking, but we have this document, and we'll put a link to it in the program notes.
I like that.
But we share this with our first-time home buyers, that here are the pros and cons of renting. Here are the pros and cons of buying, because like anything else, there are pros and cons to both scenarios. And I think, unfortunately, we live in a country where renters are not demonized, but thought of as a lesser class.
Yeah, that's true.
But there really is no shame in renting.
I mean, you're right. And so if folks go through our class and talk to our advisors, and they make a decision that they would not like to proceed with homeownership, you know what? That's a success for us as well.
Yes.
Because the point of this is making an informed decision rather than just being told, no, you can't do it.
Right.
and not necessarily told why. Well, your credit's not good enough. Well, what does that mean?
Right.
Well, I was going to say this too, counterintuitive credit system. So let's say, and I did this once myself. Let's say you have, 2 store cards on your credit. I mean, I'm thinking of Macy's and things that probably don't hardly exist anymore. But
like phones with
yeah,
cords
yeah.
and
So
phone books.
so you've got these 2 credit accounts, and you say, I'm gonna be more responsible. I'm gonna pay this off. I'm gonna cut it up. Guess what? Your credit score just went down because you closed that account.
Right.
And the way that credit scores work, it's how much credit you have currently, and
kind of available
that's
credit,
the starting point.
accessible credit.
And if that gets cut, then it's like, well, why did that get cut? They must have lost their privileges or something. No. So my point there is credit scores are very counterintuitive. Get some expert advice when you're trying to fix your credit, and don't pay for that advice. There's so much free advice out there, real advice, correct advice, and our homeownership advisors are just one of the places where you can access that for free.
Yeah. And as far as lenders go, do you have preferred lenders that you refer people to?
We don't. As a HUD intermediary, we always want to be neutral when it comes to that.
Okay.
But if someone asks one of our advisors for recommendations for, to go try to get a mortgage loan, we will give you 3 options. And those 3 will be vendors that we know how to do this. And so we don't have preferred lenders. If you ask us for a referral, we will give you 3 different folks that you can go explore on your own. But you can rest assured that those 3 are going to know what they're doing, because we don't give out folks we don't work with.
Yeah, and that they're going to be like local, real people that folks can meet with eyeball to eyeball.
Real eyeball people,
Yeah.
right? Which is very important. Don't be giving your information over the phone.
No, or online or any of that.
You don't have to do that.
Yeah, although a lot of local lenders have online portals, but that's different than
You have to have somebody that, and in my opinion, you have to have somebody real that you're working with.
I agree. Well, and for first-time homebuyers too, I think sometimes we're bombarded with marketing. Sometimes, always, we're bombarded with marketing wherever
just try to click on one of those, hey, about a mortgage. You'll get 100 solicitations the next day.
And we tell people, do not do that.
Nope.
Talk to somebody that's local in your market. And to your point earlier, that if you can't be approved for a loan, a home loan today, they'll work with you.
Right.
To get you to the point where you will be approved for a loan, and let you know kind of the resources that are available, like the Homeownership Center, and how to get there if that's what you choose to do. So we talked about homebuyer education. The 8-hour class is so kind of the best 8 hours I think you can spend.
Well, and we bring in the experts, right?
Yeah.
So there's a section on home inspections. You know what? We bring in an inspector, and they show some pretty gnarly slides, and hopefully that's going to convince you that you need a home inspection. Don't do this without one.
Right.
We bring in a realtor to talk about how to work with a realtor. We bring in a lender to talk about how to work with a lender. So it's just a great class all around.
Yeah. And all the feedback I've gotten from clients is the same thing, that it was a good 8 hours well spent. And I think you do in-person classes as well, right? People can do it online.
It can be either way. It does have to be, it's not recorded. It has to be live. So it's either live in person or live online.
Okay. Gotcha. And again, that information is on your website, which is hocmn.org, homeownershipcenterminnesota.org. And then you also do financial wellness. Why don't you talk about financial wellness, which ties into the home buyer education or advising piece? But
yeah, I kind of think of that as a funnel. So if you think of the continuum of our services, right? I mentioned this before. Someone might come in, they sit down, they get their credit pulled, they see how mortgage ready they are. They're pretty much set, right? Or they might come in and they're pretty much set, but they don't qualify for the very best mortgage offers because their credit is a little bit lower than that would require. Or they come in and they could have no credit, and that's not a reflection on spending habits. That's like how this country works with credit. You have to have a credit record in order to be able to get credit. So
Sure.
catch-22, but we can walk you through how to establish credit in the first place. My point in talking about the funnel is you're going to land somewhere, and we can talk about where those places to land. That sounds like a break is coming up.
Well, it's the end of this episode, but
let's talk about that next time.
Yes, we will. We have a lot more to get to, and we're going to carry this conversation into another episode. But the kind of long and short of it is, if you're looking to buy a home and you're a first-time home buyer and maybe first-generational home buyer,
opportunity. Yep.
And you don't have to do it alone. There are lots of great resources and partners out there, including the Homeownership Centers. So thanks for joining us today, and we will see you next time.
You bet. This is fun.
Yeah, it has been fun. It's been a good conversation. You're listening to Reckoning with Real Estate, and we will see you next Sunday.